enemy mingling the seed of men, like you said, with all kinds of different things. There's all kinds of ancient texts and literature that verifies this, that shows you, hey, these guys back in ancient times were doing some things that, you know, today we look at them as fantasy, as them mixing animals with men and this sort of thing. But this is something that was, that, you know, if you take the ancient text seriously, if you really do an in-depth study, you'll see that there's a lot there where they actually could have very well been engineering men and women in a way that they should not have. A lot of people posit one of the reasons why God destroyed life on earth through the flood of Noah was because this thing was going on to such an extent that he really couldn't find anybody on earth with respect to about 8 people who were still of pure blood in some way. So there's some things that are out there, like you're saying. That passage is in Daniel chapter 7 about where they mingle with the seed of men. I know that's one of them, where they talk about how at the end time specifically, where Daniel is describing this sort of thing, and he sees this thing. Also in Daniel chapter 2, I believe that's where he talks about the statue, and he talks about the clay is mingling with the seed of men. And, of course, that's dealing with government control. That's dealing with all kinds of ungodly things that they're tampering with something that they shouldn't be tampering with.
Yeah, iron and clay shall not mix.
That's right. And sure enough, although Mendel put forth this thing where he said, look, that doesn't happen naturally, he did not say you can't go through some back door and do it.
That's right.
So, and sure enough, like you're saying, there's all kinds of things out there on the computer that will let you know, hey, something's going on. Something is not right about this. These guys are trying to come together. Even some of the things that are more obvious, the exoteric literature, for example, like what they're doing with the cloning projects and this sort of thing.
Oh, yeah.
You know, people would be amazed if they really dug into that literature and saw what these guys are doing and what they're really capable of doing, and that's just what they're telling us.
Well, you know, you are so right, Yusef. What a blessing you are. I look here in with food, our food. They have adulterated, you know, they have put like the skin of toad in this grapes or whatever. Right. You know, fireflies and tomatoes or whatever. I mean, this is not what I would call kosher food.
No, it's not. You're right.
And look at the a news article came out recently that a grain harvest of genetically altered grain failed in South Africa. And this is very terrible for the people there because they will suffer famine because of this. The people that own this Monsanto monstrosity, it's an unholy thing before God, and he will bring judgment on this and on these men that have deceived farmers. I know in Mexico several years ago, the farmers there were very upset because their corn crops were strange. And they discovered that this genetically altered grain was being mixed in with the grain that they had been planting. Right. And they were very, very, I mean, very upset. Right. Rioting. The farmers in France have rioted. The rice farmers in California have not rioted. They don't have enough testosterone left to riot. They just simply are upset because their rice crops have been contaminated. It's everywhere, and we're eating this stuff.
That's right.
Even the Russians came out on genetically modified potatoes and said they are not fit for human consumption. Right. But the American government thinks they're just fine, and they feed it to us every day. So, I mean, there is a very satanic thing going on, deceptive, deceitful. They're doing it with people. They're doing it with animals. They're doing it with produce. You know. Right. So, you know, I don't see this going anywhere good. Right. It will not end in a good way for anybody.
Right. Right. I wholeheartedly agree. A young lady was telling me that her pastor at her church goes to Israel. And this is not to put down the precious Israeli people, Jewish people at all, but she said that her pastor is, his sister, I believe, is married to a gentleman, a Jewish scientist.
Yeah.
And this guy had pictures of where they had gone to the desert in North Africa, and they were growing tropical plants.
Yes.
In the desert soil.
Yes.
You know, it's barren all around. I didn't see the pictures myself, but she said he was saying that it was barren all around, and these tropical plants were just growing up just as healthy as they were, as if they were in their native environment. So, you know, it's like what you're saying, ma'am. You see this whole thing going on where why did the scientists accept evolution against the odds? They know about the second law of thermodynamics. They understand that, you know, the theory of evolution runs contrary to the law of entropy, where things don't go from disorder to order. They go from order to disorder. Creation says that's the truth, and the Bible testifies to that law in physics, but evolution doesn't. Why are they still accepting it against the odds? They know about this literature. Why are they still accepting it? You see this kind of odd thing where these scientists are putting aside the obvious questions that earnest scientists and earnest people and taxpayers have, where they're saying, hey, you know, what's going on here? What are you guys doing with our food? You know, I eat this apple and it tastes weird, or this doesn't look right, or why do my oranges look this way? And no one's really giving them any answers to those questions. So you see this mixture, this thing going on where they're accepting this type of evolutionary science and this thing as I believe is an excuse to do the very things that you're talking about. And because people are so wholeheartedly trusting in science, they don't understand it, they'd rather not understand it, just give me my food and I'll give you my money and I'll go along my way. And they go out of the store thinking, you know, I've got some healthy food here, not realizing they could have, we don't know what you have, you know, really. And like you're saying, ma'am, you know, you got to understand a lot of these tests and things that they do to so-called approved genetically altered foods and this sort of thing, they have not done a shelf life test on it. They have not done tests long term. They don't know what this stuff is. You know, it's not like they've had 60, 65, 75 years or so, they tell us, to really let us know what's going on. It's like with your artificial sweeteners, for example.
Yeah.
You know, no one really knew exactly what was going to happen when you started eating saccharin and stuff, you know, 100 years down the line. You know, the whole thing was, you know, these guys are mixing this stuff together. We've come a long way. Let's go ahead and put it in our sodas. Let's go ahead and put it in our foods. And people are like, hey, this tastes funny. What is this?
Yeah.
You know, not realizing, you know, that's actually something God put in you that may let you know something's wrong with that food. You need to be careful with that.
That's right. That's exactly right. And, you know, look at all these diseases that they create in laboratories.
Yes, ma'am.
This is, in my opinion, it is genocide of people. And they actually, even back in the 90s, stories were coming out, news stories, that they were able, even then, to create DNA-specific diseases, viruses that would go after people, flus that would go after certain genetic groups. And SARS was one of those. I mean, and then we have, over the years, 20-some or more scientists that have been murdered or come to a very mysterious type of death.
Right.
That those very men are the ones that could have solved a lot of these problems.
Right.
But they don't want them around.
Right.
And like Monsanto, all of this stuff, the diseases, the viruses, the flus, it's all about money for these corporations, you know, that make the vaccines, and just so very demonic.
Yeah, and like you're saying, Ms. GeorgeAnn, you know, the thing is, it says in Daniel chapter 8, it talks about the Antichrist, and it talks about how he will understand dark sentences. It also talks about how he's going to cause craft to prosper. In Revelation chapter 13, it talks about him again as the beast, and it says, who's like the beast? Who can make war with him?